Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you again, and thank you for the people online. Hello. We see you, your presence, your virtual presence. So this talk this morning or afternoon is called The Science of Consciousness and how that might relate to compassionate inquiry. And several months ago, when I was thinking about what I wanted to present, this was one of the themes that just sort of spontaneously arose. It's something I've been curious about for a long time. And so what's emerging from this is, number one, I wanted to understand from a perspective of philosophy, from science, from psychology, what is the understanding currently about what is consciousness? And secondly, I wanted to begin to create a model for CI about how it works, with some of these definitions, I suppose, or current understanding integrated into this model. I know that many of you have tremendous amount of knowledge and background in neuroscience, in philosophy, and psychology. And I'm hoping that together we can sort of flesh out this model and over time have a model that really works for all of us within CI. So this may not last, you may not like it, it may not work, but it's a simple model that I think that is a good starting place. So what I'm going to talk about are some of the psychological theories of what consciousness is, the relationship between consciousness and the mind, the views of consciousness from theoretical physics, a little bit about consciousness through a spiritual lens. We have to go to, does consciousness survive death? And then understand, which I know we all do, how mind creates the world. And then look at what is the self. And particularly, I want to establish some clarity. When we use the word self, what are we talking about? So I've created some nomenclature around that we can discuss. So this is why when we're practicing compassion inquiry, we have to be alert, we have to be present. You can't do it if you're not present. So that's the biggest thing, is presence, alertness, attention, and awareness of self and one's environment, and includes sensing and responding to internal and external stimuli. So this consciousness is directed towards the inside of us. What am I noticing? What am I feeling? What's the judgment that's happening? I'm aware of that. And it's also to the external world, who's falling asleep, who's restless, who's crying, what's the temperature in the room. You know, it's that 50-50 perception that we want to have when we're practicing CI. But the point here is that this consciousness applies to the internal world as much as it does to the external world. And so some people are more one way or the other. We have introverts and extroverts. So where is our consciousness dwelling in a way? What are we noticing the most? The internal world, the external world? And there's a time for both. Consciousness also gives us the ability to pay attention. It helps us with memory, with making choices, with the experience of agency. Who's acting? Right? Who's acting right now? Which part of you is acting? Is it the conscious part or some other part? Is it 2-year-old? Is it you as a full agent, or is it some other aspect of you? And goal-directedness is so in CI, when we say, what's your intention? We're immediately putting onto the client, we're asking them to be conscious. They're not just there unconscious, waiting for us to do the work. We're asking the client to be conscious. What's your intention? Where does consciousness come from? Who knows? So there's two primary theories. One theory is that consciousness is an emergent property of brain function. The brain creates consciousness. And that when an individual dies, the mind and consciousness of that individual cease to exist. Now, how many of you are in that camp, that domain? The consciousness is created by the brain. When we die, the consciousness is gone and non-existent. Just raise your hand if that's your belief system, just so we know. Not very many. Okay. And other theories state that consciousness exists beyond the brain and body, and that the brain acts as a filter for it. How many would be in that camp? Okay. How many of you don't know? You don't want to say. Okay. And so we can understand that your eyes don't see everything, do they? Can we see every part of the electromagnetic spectrum with our eyes? We can't. Can our ears hear every bit of sound that's in the universe? No, it's limited. There's a limited range. So it's possible, and we can't feel everything there is to feel through touch. So it's possible that just as our senses are limited, and they don't perceive everything, that consciousness can be bigger than what's present in this little body or brain or nervous system. These four, called the Max-Con theory, that was developed in 2024 by these three people that are on the screen. And it would state that consciousness exists in the widely distributed propagation of cellular activity in the nervous system, specifically the brain. We also know, this theory doesn't state that, I don't believe, but we also know that the heart is like a little brain and the gut is like a little brain. So it's not just the nervous system up here, but your heart and your gut both almost have their own capacity. They do have their own capacity to be, if we're looking at this thing, to be conscious. And the consciousness relies on large-scale cellular communication. So the more interconnected this whole system is, the more conscious we are. And during normal wakefulness, this distributed neural activity should be variable enough to allow the organism to experience changes in the environment. And the consciousness and cognition arise from this integrated dynamic process. And certainly when we compare the brains of humans to the brains of monkeys or apes, the brain of a human is more complex and there are more interconnections. So we could say that, I don't even want to say this, but from a neuroscientist perspective, we might say that a good way of saying it is humans may have the capacity to filter a greater amount of consciousness because they have a more well-developed nervous system and brain than monkeys or apes. So these are the primary physicalist theories of consciousness. There are many more. But if we look at this, then the gaps are that in each of these theories, the debate is framed about how the brain generates consciousness rather than how it processes it. So how would we know for sure that the brain is generating consciousness from these theories rather than, no, this is just how the brain processes consciousness? You can't say that it's generating the consciousness. You can just say this is how we know that we're conscious through this, these theories and the way the brain works. The insula processes interoceptive information, sensing the internal state of the body, emotions, and subjective sensations. And the right insula, on your right side, is more involved in interoceptive awareness and emotional experiences than the left. It's highly active in processing feelings related to bodily sensations such as hunger, thirst, heart rate, and breath as well. And it registers the emotional intensity and self-awareness, particularly discomfort, pain, or strong emotional reactions such as anxiety or fear. So in CI, would you say that we're strengthening the right insula? We are. When we ask, what are you noticing in your body? We're building the capacity of the right insula to pay attention to the embodied experience. And it's like meditation, really. It's a training. We have to train our clients to be able to do that. And the left insula is associated with cognitive and analytical aspects of emotions. It processes and interprets bodily signals in a way that connects them to logical thought and language. It helps to translate a physical sensation, such as tension, into a verbal or cognitive understanding of it. So then what happens is, in CI, if we say, what do you notice in your body? I notice discomfort in my calf. What's the emotion there? Gee, I don't know what the emotion is, discomfort in my calf. Maybe it's, well, it's tension. What's tension? I don't know, maybe it's anger. But see, naming the word takes it from the right hemisphere to the left. So we're bridging. The other parts of the brain that are activated when we're in this embodied self using interoception are the somatosensory cortex, which helps to process somatic information, give you a full sense of what's happening in your body, and the lateral prefrontal cortex, which helps you to pay attention to what's happening in your body, while turning down who you think you are, turning down the volume of the identified self. And research shows that people have much better health and well-being when they turn down the volume of the identified self and they increase the volume of the embodied self. Okay? That's part of the secret. We feel better, we do better. And now we go to the next aspect of self, the identified self. So we could call this the conceptual self, the narrative self, the personality, the ego. So it's the constructed identity we form, we all know this, as a compensation, as a coping strategy from childhood, through social conditioning, through our personal experiences. It's composed of beliefs, values, descriptions of events, memories, attitudes, coping strategies, stories, and evaluations. It does a lot of thinking and judging of people and things. So it's an autobiographical identity with continuity across time. Who makes up that continuity? Just the mind. You know, it's creating a construct over time. It's who we think we are. And on some level, we need that to function in the world. Otherwise, if you have no identity, how do you function? And the authentic self emerges when there's communication and integration between your left and right hemispheres of the brain. We have to have that joint communication. It also emerges when what is unconscious becomes conscious. Unconscious in the body becomes conscious. Unconscious in the mind becomes conscious. We can't be authentic until we bring that all up to consciousness. So that the degree of our authenticity relates to the degree of this consciousness and the degree of this interconnection between embodiment and identity. Would you agree? Great. I'm on the right track. And if there's not congruence between the embodied self and the identified self, if you're saying one thing but feeling another, what happens? The body says no, right? But it's the true self that's there as well. The true self is the connected thing to everything. So the true self kind of knows what you're supposed to do, right? If we listen. And then the body will follow and the mind will follow. So the true self ideally is in the lead. But these other two are connected and in communication and working with the true self, and the corpus callosum is the bridge between actually all three of these probably, but all two of them. So then, ready? There we go. All right, and so this authentic self is the integration between left and right to left hemispheres of the brain. But also integration, let's say unconsciousness is in the bottom half of the circle, consciousness is in the top half, so there's integration, two ways, left to right and from down to up, to create this authentic self. Now, it's not all, because we exist as interbeings. We're never alone. If we're ultimately connected with everything, then how can I say there's even a self, right? So we exist in relationship to everything else. Our identified self and our embodied self are constantly influenced by our surroundings, and we influence our surroundings. Both, it goes both ways. So we can't separate the self from this period of history. We're in a particular time and place. From our culture, from our location, from the climate, from nature, from our family, from the social fabric into which we were born. How can you? You're either born now or you're born another time, but they're two different, completely different people, right? So we're dependent on time and space in terms of this whole self. The grand finale. So you have the true self in the middle as kind of like the organizing principle for everything. You also have the true self on the outside of this whole system, because the true self is beyond time and space. So everything within the lines is confined within time and space. And if you can't read the writing, each of those little things in the zones just says genetics and epigenetics, the physical body, electromagnetic fields, social, cultural, local land, and global environment. And so integration is going sideways, left and right hemisphere, but it's also going from unconsciousness to consciousness in each of these zones, as well as within our own body and with our own mind. And that's my model of the self. What do you think?